ang China, kung hanggang dyan lang, wag ka lang magulo. You claim that even if you go there and them, wala rin mangyari kasi kanila talaga para sa isip nila kanila. Hindi nakinig si Carpio. Yung papel-papel mo, wag mo kong isali dyan. Walang mangyari dyan. You know, the Chinese government will just give you a finger. Hindi mo matakot yung mga yan. Because they firmly believe na kanila talaga yan. Kontra sa atin, na it is also our considered opinion that it is ours. I am addressing myself to the Chinese government. We want to remain friends. We want to share whatever it is. Sinabi ko naman sa inyo sa Chinese government, I'm not so much interested now in fishing. I don't think there's enough fish really to worry about. But when we start to mine, when we start to get whatever it is in the bowels of the China Sea sa ating oil, diyan na ako. Then but by that time, I will send my ships there. I will send my gray ships there to state a claim. Yan masiguro ninyo.
The Newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. The Maginhawa Community Pantry temporarily stops operations today due to red tagging. Residents hoping to pick up some goods at the Maginhawa Community Pantry lined up along the sidewalk even before sunrise earlier today. But the organizer says the community pantry will not open today. Ana Patricia Non says they worry about the safety of their volunteers after the PNP and even members of the NTF-ELCAC allegedly started red tagging community pantry organizers through social media. Non is now seeking the help of the Quezon City government, saying several policemen have already approached her to ask her for personal information. She is hoping that Mayor Joy Belmonte would make a move to protect the community pantry, which has been helping QC residents survive the pandemic this past week. Non also said she no longer feels safe walking to the community pantry and back home again, in light of viral social media posts alleging a connection between community pantries and communist propaganda. President Duterte says he will submit to the will of lawmakers if they decide to revoke his executive order to increase the minimum access volume and lower tariffs on pork imports. Agriculture Secretary William Dar says these measures are not killing the local hog industry, since the government is just trying to import the shortfall in pork that the country needs this year. But Duterte says he understands the point of senators concerned about the potential repercussions of such moves on the local industry.
We can always withdraw the EU that I signed. Madali naman yan. It's just a temporary measure really to bring down the prices. But the senators see it in different light.
Moving forward, the agriculture chief said they are now looking to test potential vaccines against African swine fever, which led to the country's pork prices in the first place. Dar also said that they're in talks with the U.S. Agriculture Department, testing out the vaccine, and the official says this move supports the government's push to encourage local raisers to get back in the game without fear of huge losses due to another ASF outbreak.
Yung mga commercial hog raisers ay incentivized to come to repopulate the hog industry. Yung mga naman mga backyard hog raisers ay automatic na po sila kasama dito sa insurance. Wala na silang premium at they will be paid 100%.
The Agriculture Department continues to push for additional pork imports to bring down soaring prices of the commodity. But it turns out prices are still likely to remain expensive with or without the executive order on more imported pork. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez gives us a front seat to the story.
vendors of pork are in a dilemma. Faced with the prospect of a flood of cheaper imports, some are considering getting out of the resale business altogether.
Hindi kaya ng mamimili at hindi na rin namin kaya magpalugi ng wala na, tapos na eh. Wala na ipapalugi.
But Toto is also considering switching to imported meat.
Kanya sa amin, mga nagpagawa na kami ng chiller para sa processed meat.
Aling Vicky says she's sticking to fresh local pork even if it comes as far as Visayas and Mindanao.
Gusto nila kahit mataas, basta ang baboy namin, yung tawid dagat.
Even though the Philippines sources most of its imported pork from as far as the US, Brazil, and Canada, imported meat still ends up much cheaper than the ones brought over from Visayas and Mindanao. The difference could be as much as 200 pesos a kilo. According to the Meat Importers and Traders Association, they can offer wholesalers imported pork for as low as 150 pesos a kilo.
150 pesos per kilo na live. Sa 200 pesos per kilo na yung kung carcass, kaya po ng tindera na i-retail at 300 pesos niya.
To tame prices, the DA has imposed suggested retail prices for imported pork beginning April 9. But look at the difference. That's still significantly lower than the prevailing price of local pork in wet markets, of between 370 to 380 a kilo, according to the DA's latest price monitoring report. And in reality, prices of local meat at some supermarkets have even shot up to 450 pesos a kilo.
Nagmahal ng price. Ano yung mga pork dito ngayon, kuya? Ano po to? Local or imported? Lahat po to?
In short, local pork can compete on price. Economists say that's not just because of African swine fever. It's because the local hog industry remains inefficient and outdated. At least 20 senators have now passed a resolution calling on President Duterte to revoke Executive Order 128, which not only lowers tariffs on imported pork, but also increases the allowed import volumes. But the government insists this is a temporary measure and won't kill the local hog industry.
Yung gap ay pupunuan yung augmentation galing ibang bansa. Para sa ganon, mayroon pa rin karne ng baboy.
One thing everyone agrees on is that it will take some time before local hog farmers are able to repopulate their farms. Which means in the short term, with or without the EO, fresh local pork will remain a pricey commodity. I'm Pamela Vasquez and we are One News.
Heavy rainfall warning is still up in several areas even as Typhoon Bising continues to weaken. Red rainfall warning is hoisted over Catanduanes. Residents are warned to expect flooding and landslides in flood and landslide-prone areas. Meanwhile, people in northern Samar, Sorsogon, Albay, and Camarines Sur are urged to be vigilant against possible flooding and landslides. This as the orange rainfall warning remains up over these areas. Finally, the yellow rainfall warning is raised over Masbate, including Ticao and Burias Islands. The Health Department says it is still awaiting recommendations from the WHO on measures to avoid rapid transmission if SARS-CoV-2 is indeed airborne. But the WHO says current research is still inconclusive. Greg Gregorio with the story.
Jules and his family are in their respective quarantines battling COVID-19. Jules and his sister have mild symptoms, while their parents are considered moderate cases due to their comorbidities. Jules believes one of them contracted the virus during a grocery run, despite being extremely cautious.
Ever since last year, naging maingat naman talaga with health protocols. Nakakapraning kung saan pa pwedeng makuha yun.
Previously, SARS-CoV-2, the virus causing COVID-19, is believed to spread predominantly through respiratory droplets. But a new study published in the Lancet Journal found increasing evidence that the virus is airborne. The research presented 10 evidence, including long-range transmission between people in adjacent rooms, SARS-CoV-2 in air filters and building ducts in hospitals with COVID patients, and transmission even among people who are not sneezing or coughing coughing. In an interview with One News, the Philippine College of Physicians Vice President Maricar Limpin said viruses can stay in the air for 8 hours and can travel up to 2 meters.
Making sure that there is adequate air circulation. If we need to stay or meet with somebody, then better if we do it outdoors.
The health department is awaiting recommendations from foreign experts.
So we have our existing protocols already. Aantayin po natin ang rekomendasyon pa rin ng WHO.
For the World Health Organization, more studies are needed to conclusively say that SARS-CoV-2 is airborne.
Unless we have a clear impact analysis of what degree of transmission can be attributed to aerosol, to airborne transmission, our primary focus should be on prevention of transmission through the wearing of the mask and hand hygiene.
Limpin urges the same, wearing face masks and shield, physical distancing of at least 2 meters, enough circulation indoors, and minimizing contact to only 15 to 30 minutes. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Now, how do we make sense of the terms airborne and aerosolized? Dr. Ana Ong Lim of the DOH's Technical Advisory Group tells One News' The Chiefs that the term aerosolized simply means that it's spread in the air. We're currently more familiar that droplets in the air cause the transmission of COVID-19. But how exactly does this differ from airborne transmission? Ong Lim says both droplet and airborne transmissions are aerosolized, but with droplet transmission, bigger particles of fluids are transmitted over shorter distances, whereas airborne transmissions are made up of smaller and finer particles that can suspend in the air for a longer time and can travel a longer distance.
So again, that concept of cigarette smoke, di ba? Yung malapit na nalalanghap natin na diretsong binubuga ng tao, yan yung droplet. Pero yung naaamoy na lang natin or siguro parang naaninag na lang natin na konting mga smoke na yan yung airborne transmission na pwedeng kahit malayo, nakakarating pa rin sa atin.
On One News' The Big Story, infectious disease expert Ron Jean Solantes said additional preventive measures in households and other closed spaces are needed to prevent airborne transmission. Aside from adequate ventilation, Solantes suggests increasing the required physical distancing to 2 to 3 meters from the current 1 meter.
Doon talaga tayo reposition sa natin, no? Sa mga preventive measures, particularly sa mga bahay na walang masyadong ventilation. So siguro para ma-lessen ang airborne transmission, kung meron tayong suspect na positive, na symptomatic, then you have to wear your face mask and face shield. And pinaka-importante dito yung physical distance because 3 feet may not be enough.
Climate activist Greta Thunberg will donate $120,000 to COVAX in a bid to bolster equitable vaccine distribution. This donation was made from the Greta Thunberg Foundation, which has won awards for the activist's impact on the global action for climate change. Thunberg says it is a travesty that some countries are still unable to vaccinate their vulnerable population, while first world countries have already moved on to inoculating the low-risk citizens. She thus urged the international community, including government and vaccine developers, to step up their game and address vaccine inequality. As with the quest for climate justice, Thunberg says those who are most vulnerable to the COVID-19 crisis must be prioritized.
Vaccines were developed in record time, but so far, on average, 1 in 4 people in high-income countries have received a coronavirus vaccine, compared with just 1 in over 500 in low and middle-income countries. It is completely unethical that high-income countries are now vaccinating young and healthy people if that happens at the expense of people in risk groups and on the front lines in low and middle-income countries.
And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us later at 12 noon as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.